Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
It's hard to do a proper intro for you just because of the fact that, like, I feel like I know you so well, and I'm always like going, should I go through and list all of the many times that you and Carrie have been on. Really, it's easy to find you guys on my website. Just type in either Eerie or Florida and all of the episodes will pop up. But of course, I am talking to Mr. Mark Muncy, author of the Eerie Florida book series. We've got Eerie Florida, Creepy Florida, and Freaky Florida. And we soon, though, have something new coming up, which we will be covering on this edition of ITF. And of course, those books, all three of those that I just mentioned, Eerie, Creepy, and Freaky, are available on Amazon right now, and it is, of course, if I could speak today, illustrated by the lovely Carrie Schultz Muncy, who hopefully will be joining us by the time we're done, but we're all back to work, and we're trying to get our schedules aligned, and it's sometimes a little bit difficult. But Mark, welcome back to Into the Fray.
Hey, it's good to be back, Shannon. Missed you so much.
I missed you guys.
Love listening to the show. That's our Friday morning thing now. So
well, thank you.
and it's always awesome, and we've missed you a ton. And while we were working on our next project, which was going to be another Florida book, we stumbled on something else, and it spiraled down a rabbit hole, and it took me back to my roots up in the Ohio Valley that I lived most of my early life up until my teens when we moved down to Florida. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got another whole side thing. So our next project is actually going to be Eerie Appalachia instead. And that's what we've been working on, and it'll be out next year. It was supposed to be out this year, but virus and other things, and like I said, we were actually working on a different project, so that got kind of pushed to the side so we could work on this. This was a kind of our restructure year. Carrie's actually working on the cover for Eerie, New Mexico from our publisher, from a different author, the same way she did Eerie, Alabama for a different author. So she's been keeping up, still in the field and everything, and still doing all that. So while she was taking a break from our stuff to do those, and then this came out, this rabbit hole I started going down, and and so it became a whole new project. So we'll be discussing that.
I'm very excited about that, and I have a question for you. Is it frowned upon to say Appalachia?
Appalachia. I grew up in Ohio, and I spent my weekends on our family farm in Louisa, Kentucky, which is right on the West Virginia border. Mm-hmm. And that was my first 5 or 6 years of life, 6 to 8. I think it was about 8 when we moved to Charleston, West Virginia. And my dad got promoted in Greyhound, went there. We stayed there for many years, but I still spent every weekend at that same farm in Kentucky. And my dad and I drove all around West Virginia because he was a regional Greyhound manager. So I know the states and that whole area very well. They call it the tri-state area: Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia. There's a lot of tri-state areas depending on where you live. And so they call it the Appalachians. They call it Appalachia. It just depends on which holler you happen to be down.
Right, I figured. Just one of those things. I like to put the twang on when I get a hold of it, and go to speak it. So yeah,
it comes back as I've been interviewing people for this one. The more I interview them, the more it comes back, and then I'm stuck and I can't get out of it. Yeah, it's like, oh no, I spent years getting rid of that accent.
Right, it's coming back.
Yeah, no, it's so easy. Yeah, so it all depends. I mean, the fun thing about it is we realize now, language experts realize now that the folks that live in those hollers in Kentucky and West Virginia, those back roads hollers, and their voices and their language is probably the most untouched from the original English of even, from the early colonists. So when you think about that, that means Shakespeare, when you go to a Renaissance festival and somebody comes up to you and goes, "What ho, my lord," you expect that. But in truth, they probably sounded more like, "What ho, my lord."
See, and people make fun of certain accents from some certain people, and now maybe that'll zip that up a little bit, see?
Yeah, exactly, because they are the least, intruded upon by outside influence. Right. So that is probably closer to the original Shakespearean English. Think about that next time you're driving through the hills up there. So.
Well, and it's funny because when you're reading something like Lord of the Rings or, anything really from that side of the pond, and, they're using words like moors, and you're kind of going, what's a moor exactly? It's the same thing down in that region of the U.S. when you go, what a holler? What's a holler?
Yes.
And people just don't. If you don't know you don't know what you don't know. So you're kind of going, what in the heck is a holler?
Yep, exactly. It's a valley for those that don't know.
It's a valley, a ravine, or a gully. There's all sorts of different, I guess, words we can use for such.
To go Tolkien, it's like a shire. It's like where the same families all grow up together and interact. So they just build their houses right down the road from each other, and rather than go 20 miles to the near city, they form their own little communities in these divots. Between mountain ranges. So you want the ones that have the good farmland or the good families, and the ones that are just scraping by, down in the hills. They were the ones that Granny gave them that just to give them a place, and so that they could work with the big farm up the hill.
So when you say so maybe I'm even mistaken. So I always thought of a holler as, in fact, like a ravine of maybe varying sizes. But you are saying you could say holler for maybe an entire like a small community, like a small town.
Yeah, but they're usually geographically separated. It could be a river on one side and a mountain on one side. It generally tends to be mountains because there's just so many up there. I'm sure people out in the Rockies say, "Oh, those aren't mountains." Yeah, well, some of them. But
John Denver's full of shit, man.
They're hills. There are a lot of hills and valleys, and a lot of rivers and creeks. And that tends to separate them as well. Anyway, this all started with, we were interviewing witnesses for the Crestview sighting in 1967 in Florida. We had been down in the Miami area. We were doing our usual looking for monsters. And we'd been researching the squallies. Are you familiar with them?
I am not at all.
Okay, this is a cryptid in South Florida. They were small humanoids with pig heads.
Oh boy!
And they tend to dress tribally, and they would come out and attack people. And this is in the late 40s, early 50s. Most of the sightings, and they were all very small, like 3 to 4 feet. In size, so like almost pygmy-esque. And so the few sightings of them, people are like, what the heck is this? And so rumors, of course, were they were a native tribe that had just disappeared into the woods and wore pig heads. Others were that they were into the Everglades. And then other rumors were that they were a government experiment that had gotten loose. That was genetics in that area. Camp Murphy down there, which was a secretive base anyway. It was actually because they were developing radar. They're this new technology that nobody knew about. Stories gathered and all this. So, but there were more than a few sightings. So it was one of those interesting stories. We're like, okay, well, we need to talk to some people. And while we were there researching that, we were actually trying to tie that into recent sightings up in the Seminole Woods, a little further north and more central Florida, where they had been seeing large 6 foot, 7 foot tall people with pig heads, and they were calling them the Boar Man. So I was like, well, maybe they've grown up. What if 30 years passed and these things grow up? So that was kind of an angle we were working on for this story. And while we were doing that, a guy reached out to me while we were asking around in that area about them. A person reached out and said he was one of the original Crestview witnesses. And now, for those of you who don't know what the Crestview sighting is, it's Florida's Roswell, basically, except no crash. What happened was in early April in Miami-Dade area, this school this is in 1967, and they're right in this school. There's a boy and a teacher who are out in the playground, and it's recess is over, and everybody's coming in, but this one boy's kind of lost in the sky. He's like looking up at the sky. And teacher comes up to him and says, "Hey, you need to come in. Recess is over." And he's like, "But what's that?" And the teacher looks up, and they both see it. So they have two witnesses seeing this unusual disc-like craft way up in the air, and nobody really knows what it is. Nobody can really figure it out. Neither of the two of them recognize it, but they know it's something unusual. It had kind of a weird bluish light to it. It's an odd tail, and they don't think much of it. They can't really figure it out, and then it just disappears instantly. They go inside, and they don't think anything of it. But the next day, it's the talk of the school, right? Every kid's talking about what did he see? What is this madness that he saw, right? And now the morning, the kids are like, "What's going on? This is what did you see?" And he's not really talking about it. The teacher hasn't arrived yet, and then it comes back, and it brings friends, and it comes close to the school. So now we have over 200 witnesses, students, teachers. You're not keeping the kids in school when this is going on right outside.
Right.
The big disc craft appears right at the other end of the parking lot across this fenced area. And the cylindrical, cigar-shaped ones come with it. About 3 or 4 of those, depending on, the description of the witness. We're pretty sure it was 3. And they start dancing around this thing, like super fast, doing crazy maneuvers. And this thing's hovering, blinking in and out. It's doing, the lights are going crazy on it. It's like putting on a show. And the kids are loving it. There's no real fear. They're all trying to figure out what the heck this is. And so they start storming out of the school. Now, this is, 1967. And kids just run out of school. Teachers are running out, too, because they want to see it. And so now you've got this spectrum of witnesses. Normally, on a UFO sighting, you're lucky to get a few witnesses. Right. This is hundreds. Their minds are blown. This thing is going crazy. And then it flies into the trees, but it doesn't touch any of them. Like, it disappears into the trees without hurting them. Some say it kind of looked like it went through a portal, an invisible portal. And then the cigars go out, and the kids are like, "Oh, it's gone." But then they come back, and they do a little bit more. And then they go again. And then this time it comes back a third time without the cigar-shaped ones. And then this time it just takes off into the sky, super fast, disappears. So what the heck did they see? Talk of the school for hours, right? Nobody's going to get any work done today. Nobody's going to get any school done today. What did we just see? This is where it gets interesting, because, as though that wasn't already interesting, the military show up. And they come in and they start interviewing all the select students. Not all the students, select students. And several of the teachers. What the heck did you see? What did you describe it? And eventually one of the kids says, "Well, they were hovering like helicopters." So guess what the story was the newspaper put?
Yeah, big shocker there, right?
Yeah. Helicopters.
Just dismissed it, the whole thing.
Yeah, it was all helicopters. Put on a strange show. Kids, so because the first newspaper headline, UFOs over Crestview. The next day, UFOs, debunked by Coast Guard helicopters on maneuvers. Now, these are people who live in a town with a Coast Guard base and a nearby Air Force base, and not too far from the Navy base. They knew helicopters. They knew this stuff. This was not that. The large oval craft, it was supposed to be as big as like a cruise ship, according to some of the kids. And, that's some crazy size for a helicopter, right? Anyway, the cigar ships, they're all metal, they're all shiny, and the cruise ship actually kind of landed, they said, at one point. So all these stories are kind of conflicting and all that. I start looking into this for a future Eerie book. I'm like, okay, so this will go with our squallies. We got chapter 2 right here.
Right.
And then and I reached out to the witness groups. Now, because these were kids in the 60s. A lot of them are still around. So, and they're just starting to talk about it. Because what happened was, in the early 2000s, that it disappeared from the consciousness of everybody. It was helicopters. Nobody asks about it. Nobody talks about it for a long, long time. Nobody thinks about it. It disappears. It's not like Roswell where everybody thinks about it every couple years. It's gone. But then internet, thank you Facebook, thank you everything for, which has saved us on several stories. You grew up in Crestview when somebody posted hey, do you guys remember this? And then everybody starts talking about it. The X-Files comes on, internet appears, and suddenly people are willing to talk about it now. It wasn't no helicopter, it was something else. And then last year, with the Navy declassifying the UFOs, or early this year, but that footage coming out last year, now they're validated. We saw something and they're covering it up. And so we got several people talk to us that hadn't, talked to other people before. But one in particular, he still doesn't want to be named. He still is kind of one of those, he's kind of prominent in the city down there. So I don't even want to give any clues except for that. So he's still one of those, he can't talk about it 100% just yet on record, but he talked to us. And I've got the recordings, and so at some point I'll be able to release those. But I had to tell the story because this is where we went on a rabbit hole.
So really quickly, when you say several of them have spoken to you, is all of that going to be, whether it's their names are anonymous or not? That's never bothered me. But are they allowing their stories to be included in Eerie, or is it just some of it's not to be included in it?
No, they're going to be included.
Wonderful.
That's we've got a couple exclusives on them, so we can't put those out yet. The publisher's like, hang on to those.
Right.
But yeah, these people are talking. So if you reach out to those groups, you can get witnesses because there were hundreds. So it's not like a big deal but I've got, this one is the one I had to talk about. This guy, he was one of the ones who the military came to his house after school. He wasn't interviewed at school. He was one of the ones that got interviewed at home. Military suits, Air Force, Coast Guard, and a guy in a suit comes in. And the guy in the suit is in like a blue, shiny suit. It's like he was trying to be Air Force colors, but not doing a great job at it. The other two guys, the military guys with him, are just kind of walking ahead of him. He doesn't say anything the entire time they're there, the guy in the suit. But the kid is fascinated by him, right? And the military guys are asking him some questions. Now, he's a kid, at the time. So he was like, they were government men, his dad told him. They were from the government, you need to talk to them. Of course, no problem. So the kid told him about what he saw. And he told him about all the oval-shaped objects, and he didn't know what to make of it. And so the men in uniform are interviewing him, and what he doesn't realize is the guy in the back has not said a word, but he's answered a couple of his questions. He's only realizing this as an adult, that as he thinks back on it. The guy, he heard him, but he never noticed, and the guy was just always smiling. Now, does this sound familiar to any of our cryptid viewers, and frequent listeners into the fray at this point? Because it rung a bell with me. And then I asked the then young man, he is no longer young, what he thought about this. And he's like, well, I didn't think much of it, but I went back, now that all this is coming out and everything. And he's like, I might discuss this now publicly. So he started looking over his papers from the day, and he had a note that was written by his parents, and his father had written down the names of the officers that came in to interview him. So I had names, The third one, the one that didn't have a rank, was just named Cold.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
COLD.
COLD. Now, for those of you can see why this suddenly brought us up to Appalachia very quickly. So, because of just a few months before that would have been the initial sighting of Indrid Cold, the Grinning Man.
And oh my goodness.
Goosebumps?
Sorry, I'm processing. If everyone's like, Shannon's really not talking a lot, it's because this is the first time I'm hearing the story. Yeah, this is very, very cool. And so the man also.
Now you see why I've been chomping at the bit for a month to tell you this?
Oh my goodness. This is actually pretty huge, especially with the timing of it is insane.
And the kid didn't even know who that was. But,
Right.
Now I keep calling him the kid because I referred to him in the book as a kid.
And to add that detail in there, that wouldn't have been something just to randomly throw in there. And the man in the blue shiny suit, he was smiling the whole time. He's just grinning.
Smiling the whole time. So just had a weird smile. He didn't say like sharp grin or anything like that. This was when this guy was telling me this story, he hadn't even put it together yet.
Oh my
He just thought it was this weird guy. And when he read me the names, and it was an Officer Clint, and it was a Petty Officer Clint was, I guess, the Coast Guard representative, and I haven't been able to find him. The Air Force rep was a Captain Stanley, and there's so many Captain Stanleys in Florida in that time. It's going to be tough narrowing that one down too, but. How many? And then the other one just lists as Cold,
and
no name, no rank, no nothing.
Oh my gosh!
Yep, and the parents apparently didn't even think anything about it. They were from the government, and they had heard the story. Everybody was talking about it. So
now, Mark, when you guys are sitting here and you must just have repeated, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh," in your head so many times, and you're like, okay, you hear the year, you hear the his mannerisms, what he was wearing, and then the name comes out, and you must have been like, okay, mind blown, hold the phone here.
Yep. And I'm so suddenly now I'm like, holy cow. And then I immediately had to check the time frame because Cold was not unknown at that time because, when Derenberger's first encounter with him, for those listeners that don't know, he appears first in 1966, just a few months before this. And he is in a cylindrical craft. He passes this guy named Derenberger. It's up in West Virginia, along the West Virginia border in Ohio. And he stops in front of this traveling salesman guy and gets out, and he's in this shiny green suit. And he says, I mean you no harm. I come in peace, blah, blah, blah. And he goes off on this guy for like an hour or two talking to him, and he's learning about Earth. And he's, again, telepathic, not talking. He's just smiling the whole time. And he gets national press from this, Derenberger. And so, again, no real reason for it. He didn't really come across as like an exploitive, I'm seeking attention from this. He just wanted to report it. And, his recording is out there. You can listen to it and hear his interview with this guy. So it hit national press, but not really everybody reads those stories, back then. So there is no reason for this kid at the time or his parents to know what this is. So now Indrid shows up a few more times, and he most famously appears in Keel's Mothman Prophecies as the phone call scene from Richard Gere that we all know from the movie. Is supposedly the call from Indrid Cold. Some people have associated him with Men in Black. Some people have associated him with that he's an alien. And Derenberger's, his daughter's written books about their trips, his trips to other planets, because Indrid came back and took him to his home planet and stuff like that. Now that stuff, I don't know where it goes, but this makes it seem like, okay, he was either working with the government, working for the government, or he has a couple people who are better at impersonating people than he is.
What was the man? They supposedly have a picture of him, and darn it all, I cannot remember his name, but he was like this taller gentleman with stark white hair. And some people speculated that he was also, an alien kind of working with the government.
Yeah.
What was his, kind of the same situation that people claim
again,
with
very
Cold.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple other names that come out there when you talk about Cold too that have been used, and people think that's similar. But Indrid's the one that keeps coming up.
Do you know when the very last time that someone claimed that it was quite well known, widely known, as far as a claim, that someone had contact with Indrid Cold? Do you know when that was?
There's a sighting earlier than Derenberger with some kids in New Jersey that are now saying that that's the first sighting of them. That would have been about 3 months before Derenberger, but they didn't talk to him. They ran. I would too.
Yeah.
If I'm a kid and some dude in a green suit's like motioning to me with a strange smile, instincts to run. But then his sightings go on for a while, up until the early 70s, for like solid, this was him. And then he disappears. But then every once in a while he'll pop back up, and I don't know, I'm not going to doubt the validity of any of those, but they don't seem to be as detailed. Right. Or sometimes one of those that's just a little too detailed, like some of the more recent sightings. So I'm like, okay, the 2017 one seems a little fanfic.
Who said that they saw that? Just really quickly. Maybe I don't know that I'm familiar with that one.
It was 2017. There's a report. It's on, of course, it's a Reddit post. And it's one of those, I can't tell you where and I can't tell you why.
Right.
So it's like, okay, is this just trying to be a creepypasta? Right. Or a no sleep? No, this was, but it was, and every question got kind of just, I can't talk about it. it. So you can't really put any weight behind those. I hate those. Those are like dead ends.
The Reddit stuff can be so fascinating, but it's extremely nefarious, much like anything on YouTube. Because you can be so anonymous. But I remember when, when that whole Ranger thing hit Reddit, and he was trying to say that he was going to come out with all this information, and it's such a black hole over there. But David Weatherly, because, when you say, sometimes people call him the grinning man, and then, of course, but, depending on who you talk to, Indrid Cold is Indrid Cold, and he's over here, and then the grinning men are over here. But, it does make you wonder if it is interchangeable and or the same thing. Even David Weatherly himself has seen, while riding in a car, a grinning man off the side of the road, and he, it's like he's like, it was terrifying. This guy was just horrific looking, and he never stopped grinning. And you're like, well, what the hell are you like grinning about? It just it didn't make any logical sense, and especially the way that this thing, or whatever you want to call it, entity looked. It was very, very terrifying.
Very strange. And then I started looking into it more, and I'm like, okay, so this was leading to Mothman, of course, because everybody tries to tie those two together, and I don't see them together. I see them as two separate events, even though they were in the same time period. There was also a huge UFO flap in Miami at the time. There was a huge UFO flap in a couple other cities, all in the late 66, 67. And Mothman's right in the height of all that, right? And I was seeing them as two separate things. I'm like, this is not. And so I started reaching out to some of the, my family up in that area. And I knew a couple of them had some Mothman stories that I had heard as a kid. And I hadn't really paid much attention to them until I started looking into this stuff. So I'm like, I better catch up with these folks. Yeah, they're getting up there. I don't want to lose these stories. And now that I'm working on this, that it might turn into something else, I started talking to them. And one of them told me that they had seen the creature flying over their cornfield and didn't think, other than it was just a large bird at the time. But then when they noticed it never flapped its wings. And when it turned towards them, it kept flying the other direction while it turned towards them. That a bird couldn't do. A strange maneuver, right? Like sidestepping in a video game or something is the only way I could describe it. It's not something you actually do. And then it turned back and flew away. after they reported it, because there had been all these reports of it, they got visited by men in black, guys in suits from the government. And I'd never heard this part of the story before. I just remember them saying, "Oh, it flew over our corn." That's all I'd ever heard of the story. But then it was enough to where guys in suits showed up to talk to him. Now, when I was asking them about the guys in the suits, because I'm starting to dig a little bit into Men in Black for this book, one of them said, and the third guy in the back never said a word and just stood there smiling. And now suddenly I'm like, wait, all right, that's too much of a coincidence for them to just mention this. And so I start prying a little bit. Did you get their names? They're like, no, they just said government people. And I'm like, oh, come on, like, give me a time.
Number 2, another one says the same exact thing.
Exactly. I'm falling down the rabbit hole.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm like, okay, so I start reaching out about Men in Black in the area. And of course, when you start reaching out about them, you start getting some really interesting emails. I'm sure you've probably gotten a few over your years about this stuff. I got one from a guy who said in the early 80s, he had this weird experience. He woke up in the middle of the night, and there was a man standing at the foot of his bed smiling at him and said to him, "Put on this suit. Put on your suit." And he didn't even own a suit, but there was one in his closet. And he put it on, and the man just leads him out of his apartment. Now, this is like 2 a.m. He doesn't know why he's following this guy. He doesn't know why he suddenly has a suit. And he follows this guy, and this guy walks him down the street, walks him into another apartment building, walks him in down this hall, walks up to an apartment, knocks on the door. When the door opens, he's standing there with this, strange man, and the door opens, and this lady in her pajamas. And he says, he's suddenly, in his head, he knows what to say. And he says, "We know you saw the UFO yesterday. We need you to not talk about it. It's a classified government operation. If you let anybody know about this, the Russians will be able to destroy us." And so she goes, okay. And he's like, it's all hazy. He doesn't know where this is coming from. He doesn't know this lady. He doesn't know anything about UFOs. He doesn't know anything about this stuff. And this other guy's just standing there next to him, smiling at him. And he's doing all this talking. And then she closes the door, and then he walks home with the guy. And then the guy just doesn't walk into his apartment. He goes in and goes to bed. And when he wakes up, the suit's gone, and he doesn't remember much of nothing. He says the only reason he remembers this, he thinks, is because he had been taking all these stay awake pills. And so immediately my thought is, okay, stay awake pills in the 80s, that's speed.
Right.
Yeah,
quote
so
unquote,
I can't take this as full documentation,
right?
But that would kind of explain a lot of the Men in Black's behaviors, that they don't quite understand certain things, because what if they're asleep? And what if they're under influence? What if they're under control of something? So now I'm on another conspiracy theory rabbit hole. And I got more than 3 stories from that. And of course, I found Nick Redfern had gotten a letter almost similarly detailing that he posted at one point on his website. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So now I got to email Nick.
It was almost nearly the same thing where somebody had to change into something, and they take them somewhere else.
Exactly, but they didn't have the grinning man with them. That he just was half asleep, did it. And then both of them, my witness, said that he couldn't, when he tried to walk the path the next day, he couldn't even find the building.
Oh.
And let alone the apartment, let alone anything.
Yeah.
And it was, so it was very surreal. And then the Nick's letter story is very similar. So
this stuff is so just very weird and strange. You can't help but love stories like this,
Right. So you're going through all that, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And so Men in Black showed up all over. There are more reports of them than there are Mothman sightings when you really look into it in Point Pleasant in 66 through 67, up to the bridge collapse. It's a lot of sightings of the military there and the Men in Black. And that's what really gives me the willies. I think I'm more afraid of them than the Mothman.
No kidding. I mean, it's always the going story here is the government men and then the third wheel or the fourth wheel, and he never speaks and he's always just sitting there grinning. So isn't that interesting?
And immediately that's what Chris Carter did for Cigarette Man.
Yeah.
And I think Cigarette Man was scarier before he started talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's immediately you're like, holy crud, what have we stumbled on? Is this the Holy Grail? Is this a smoking gun? This is definitely something interesting. It's evidence that makes sense and isn't just thrown in there. So all this, and we've got all these Mothman witnesses talking about the Men in Black, talking to them, and we've got all that in that same time frame. You're talking a couple years. The Grafton monster, the Mothman, the UFOs, the UFO flaps, all in that 66 to 68 window. It's pretty crazy.
What does the Grafton monster look like?
The Grafton monster is kind of a big, looks almost like a walking rock of white, or sometimes some people say he's like a white skunk ape, or Sasquatch up there. Sorry, I'm so used to Florida. A white, like an albino Bigfoot, but his head is like sunk down into his chest, almost like Mothman, where you can't really see if there's a head because it's kind of under the shoulders. It's another fun tale we're working on for Appalachia. So I can't really talk about him too much right now.
No, and thank you for even just answering that. I just see I every time I get on with you, I learn several new things and hear new things that I've never heard of before. So I always love to chat with you. Thanks for indulging me on that.
No.
And actually, I can cut that out if you want me to.
No, it's fine.
You sure? Fine. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that.
People look up Grafton Monster. Hey, great. Now, when they see my book come out, they'll say, "Oh, hey, there's a story about Grafton Monster."
That's right. I kind of heard them tease that. Okay, good. All right. Sorry.
When we start doing the Eerie Appalachias officially, early next year sometime, or maybe later this year, we'll start. We'll talk about Grafton in the first one. I promise.
Yeah. No, I'm so excited for this to come out. And you guys must be, because this is all that you guys do. I mean, much like me. I mean, yes, we have our normal jobs, but this is your passion. So you guys must have been just jumping up and down and a little creeped out at the same time once you started getting all of these tidbits together, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly where it went, completely off the rails from the original project. Some other researchers have this happen too, but this was, oh my gosh. Now I've gotten calls from Bigelow Aerospace called me, which I did not expect a call from. Again, that's something that'll be in the book. I can just tease a little bit. They gave a statement, which is all I wanted, about an incident and some land they own up in that area. This went a whole different. We started looking into Serpent Mound and Alligator Mound, and we've got another interesting take on those. There's all kinds of craziness in this book that I think is some new takes on some classic stories. And, we always throw in the history behind it. And I think that's what gives us an insight into it that others don't really talk about. So I think that's where we've got a nice take on Alligator Mound that is going to shake some things up. It's not an unknown theory, but I think we've got some more proof to back it up on why Alligator Mound is misnamed. And then we've also got some other stuff with Mothman that's some new and interesting twists. And like I said, it's a lot to go. But man, the Men in Black stuff, I got to tell you, I got chills. And Carrie was listening to me the next day after I interviewed the guy who had emailed me, and we really got his story down. It was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. The idea of that. And then you start researching and you find out there are a couple other people who have that theory. And it's like, oh my gosh, this kind of validates these theories. But then finally, the thing that got me the most was as we're wrapping these files up, we're getting ready to submit our pitch to the publisher. And I've got my unique takes on a couple things and all that. He's like, that's kind of a big area. You want to narrow it down? And I'm like, I can't. Because this all ties together.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, no problem. You guys know what you're doing." And I'm like, "It really is kind of about the same size as Florida. It's just it's over 3 states or 4 states technically." Yeah, it's just you twist it and look, and I had to show the publisher a map of Florida turned sideways versus the Ohio Valley.
Right.
And again, Erie, Ohio Valley just didn't sound good, so that's why we went with Erie Appalachia.
Yeah.
Although we're a little we're a little out of the Appalachians for some of it. But I got to put my bench leg story in there, which is cryptid from my home, so that got to fit in there too because it was about the same period when it started showing up. So it's all this strangeness going on in West Virginia in the 60s, and you're like, and Ohio and Kentucky, and it all pieces together. And then the last little piece that fell into my lap was right here at the end. We were wrapping it up, we were making the pitch, and I get a phone call, and it's a phone call from Japan. Now, I don't get many phone calls from Japan. I have a couple friends out there, and I was trying to figure it out, and I answered it, and it was a guy who was visiting Japan, saw something unusual, and some men at a table next to him sat down, and it was at a sushi bar type place, and the men sit next to him and start trying to get him to have drinks with them, and he realizes that one of them isn't talking and is just smiling and can't figure out how to use chopsticks, can't figure out how to use forks, is like just unable to do anything, and he immediately thought of me, and because he had been reading some of my posts, and he called me to tell me this wonderful story, and that he had an encounter because he was about to talk about his UFOs. He's a fellow UFO blogger, and he called me back to say, I just had my first encounter with a Men in Black, and they were telling me not to post my article and I should post something more serious.
No way. How are they finding these people? And I have to ask, are you guys keeping your eyes peeled for black sedans? And I mean,
I will tell you, every time I see a guy in a suit, I take a little second look just to be safe now. Although I am waiting for somebody to show up in a lime green tuxedo because that's the classic view.
Yeah.
Our Elizabeth Abbott, our editor and manager, she is so on the Indrid Cold, boat. She is ready. She wants us to be the first to interview him. Yeah, so she's put it out there. Hey, if you want to talk to anybody, we'll talk to you, Indrid. Just come on down. And I'm like, I don't know if we want to open that can of worms, but why not? Why not? So Indrid, if you hear this, we're ready to talk. We'll listen. Shannon will listen. I'll listen. However you want to do it. So.
Yeah, even if you happen to have that super creepy voice like that says chapstick in the Mothman prophecies, well, we're ready for it. We can handle it. I promise you.
I know that one's the one everybody thinks about. I always go back to James Lynch's Lost Highway, or David Lynch, and Robert Blake. I am so sad he did not get the Academy Award for that, because that was probably the creepiest performance ever. His Grinning Man is / Indrid Cold is probably one of what I picture every time I hear his name.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's not, from the descriptions I've heard really and the real interviews, that's not him at all. But I do hear bald. I do hear no eyebrows, just no hair, and just the kind of an odd smile, and just nodding a lot, like active listening, nod, but almost rhythmically. Instead of,
well, they can't, it's like these things, unless it's just, I say these, but it is just one thing. We don't know, but they just can't quite people right. They can't get the human quite right. They're not really at 100% capacity to be normal amongst us.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one they were talking about. The guy in Crestview was saying he didn't understand the pencil that the dad was using to write the names down. That was the thing his dad mentioned, was like he looked at the pencil a long time, and he thought the guy had just kind of zoned out. Yeah, or maybe had a minor stroke or something. He said he asked him, "Are you okay?" And the guy just looked up at him and smiled and nodded.
Oh wow, creepy! Gosh.
Yeah, and so it's they understand everything else. They understand these advanced particle theory and parallel dimensions and portals and all this. Everybody who talks about strange stuff, they seem to understand it, but then they can't figure out how to use their cell phones.
Yeah.
Or how to use, like that guy couldn't figure out chopsticks. But that's fine. You're in Japan. You might be a tourist. You might not understand chopsticks, but then he couldn't figure out the fork.
But unfortunately, at the same time, they're asking him not to post. So it was his own personal UFO story. He was already a UFO blogger, but he was going to come out with something that was personal to him.
Yeah, he had seen something unusual. He had been called out to interview a couple witnesses. And when he got there, they were talking to him, and he was about to go home and post about it. And he actually stopped for sushi and his usual spot. And then these guys came in that he didn't know, and they were in suits. And he thought it was funny at first. He's like, oh, hey, look, guys in suits talking next to me. But then they started trying to get him to drink with them, and they were speaking pretty good English, and that's not unusual there, but not common in his area of Japan where he's at. And then he said the guy at the end, that's when he realized, he's like, oh my gosh. And then when they immediately just told him out of the blue, he hadn't said anything about what he does. And what he does, he just decided, all right, it's time to go. He paid his check, got ready to go. And they were like, you didn't have a drink with us. And he's like, oh, no, I got to go. And they're like, and hey, listen, just stop posting that silly stuff. Write something serious.
Wow.
Help the world. Write something serious. Don't write that.
I've been waiting since I started the show for somebody to say something like that to me, and it just hasn't happened yet. I'm so bummed out.
I'm starting to get nervous that I might be getting near that tilting point.
Hey,
because
high five. I'm wondering too, because I'm like, man, you really have uncovered a very, very interesting portion of that very small time frame where there was a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, exactly. And it all ties together. It's all, and that's just it. That's why I was like, okay, this can't just be another Florida book at this point. We'll put Squallies. Right. We'll save them for the next. We will get back to Florida, and we will talk about the Squallies and the Boreman and some other fun stuff that might wind up on our show because, as we've discussed, we're filming a TV show now called Eerie Travels, and with a local TV crew, and we've been working on it for a little while. We had just started getting the pilot filmed when all this broke loose, and we suddenly couldn't film in the locations we wanted to film in because they all went on lockdown. So that's getting back started again. So we may throw Squallies into that. That could be our intro bit or something. But that's maybe the Miami episode will get that. Yeah, we've been just starting back. We went on a ghost hunt this weekend at a cemetery up in Tarpon Springs, and some more fun. So we will be, that's our other side project that we're working on, as if we don't have enough side projects.
Yeah, if you're not going to be battling the Men in Black soon enough, you have other things to do, right?
Exactly. If they want to show up on the show, I mean, if print isn't your media, Indrid, come on down. We'll put you on TV. So you can talk.
They got a nice, comfy chair for you to sit in and everything.
Yeah. We'll we got throat mics or boom mics, however you want to do it.
That's right. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, we'll be comfortable with you. But yeah, that's a whole nother side gig that we're just having fun with, and so maybe we'll put in some of these things that may not wait for print.
Right.
We might that. So
no, Mark, really a huge congrats on uncovering that. That, I mean, huge high five. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was definitely. That's why I've been trying to dying to talk to you for a couple weeks. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to tell Shannon. I've got a Crestview link to Indrid, which links to everything, and it's just like, holy crud! And and if you start realizing that, I know they tried to tie the Glasgow, Gurning Man into it, all that. I think that's something completely different. There's some ties to the Hat Man phenomena, I think, because of Indrid. What if, the people who see Hat Man are people who were being recruited as MIB and they saw Hat Man? Because that could have been Indrid. Who knows? It's a rabbit hole. Like I said, it's one of those, because that's a whole nother theory that he's related to them. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Don't start seeing Hat Man in the house, though. I get a little worried about you guys. I'm like, don't go to the dark side.
And that's the plus side. None of this is, but that's the plus side to having Carrie around as my, my ghost lodestone, that nothing affects her. She sees nothing. She feels nothing. The studio where we're filming Eerie Travels, there's a show there we film there every week called Nerd Talk, where we just talk about nerdy things. That's actually how I got in with this production company, was I was on a couple episodes of them, and then they kept me on as a panelist. Just because I know so many nerdy things. I grew up in the 70s and was a nerd in West Virginia. All I could do was learn more nerdy things. Hey,
you don't know nerdy things. You know cool things. Let's get that straight.
Okay, that's true. The right pop culture.
That is right.
But anyway, so we're sitting there and we're filming an episode, and it all goes out live. and there's 2 other empty studios while we're filming in the main studio. And at one point in an episode, I saw something walk through the back studio. I thought it was somebody had just come into the studio through the back door and wandered in there. And I'm like, wait, we're the only people in here. And I certainly don't want anybody walking out onto our live show. So I kind of nudge over to the host and the guy who runs the studio, and he saw it too. And it looked like a shadowy, solid person, just kind of walking through the other room. And I was like, I thought it was a person. So we both look up, and then he actually gets up and walks off camera to go look in the other room to see who the heck it is.
And this is live. You're on live.
This is live. So he's like, talk amongst yourselves. I think I got somebody walked into the studio. I better check. And so we keep talking nerdy stuff, and I'm just kind of leaning in and going, what the heck? And we just kept talking, and he comes back and it's like, nobody there. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's no way out of that room except into this studio. And he's like, yep. So we started talking about it, and then, of course, we started joking about we're going to have to put a camera in the studio to see if we catch anything else. Sure enough, 3 different shows filmed there. There's like 7 shows that film there during the week, but 3 film at night. And all 3 of them have now seen something strange in Studio 3. And so we are going to actually put cameras there just to see what we can see.
Absolutely. Well, that's very cool.
Yeah.
How long had those guys that were hosting been filming in that studio? Was that the first time he had ever seen anything there?
That's the first time they'd seen anything. They apparently have seen stuff off and on over the years. They've been there about 3 years. And they've heard weird noises, but nothing like the activity in the last few months. But we're hearing that from a lot of our paranormal friends, that activity in the last 3 months is off the charts. But most of that is because everybody's home.
Right.
Most people assume all the weird stuff happens at night, but now people are home during the day and are seeing things and hearing things. And as we've known, researching all this, almost every ghost story we've researched, it's in the middle of the day or dawn or early mornings when stuff happens. It's so much more than at night.
And you have to wonder, too, if the heightened state of anxiety and stress also helps to feed that energy, right?
Exactly. And that's what's happening is this studio, they're filming a lot. They're having to use the other studio rooms that they normally don't use because they're rotating them so they can sanitize them between shoots. And so that one big studio has been staying empty, and it's never been empty that long. And that's where all the sightings are, is people catch it out of the corner of their eye. People, are seeing movement in there, and they're thinking, oh, who's in there? Who's in there? And there's nobody there.
You know what's going to be kind of frustrating, though? Probably the moment that because I'm sure that they've got some pretty decent equipment in there. Just the cameras alone. The second you put a camera over there, it's probably going to stop or just go into a corner that it's not going to be able to be filmed.
Or it's going to be just off camera or just off focus.
Right. It'll still be just you guys reacting to something over there that no one else is going to be able to see, because it just somehow always is able, not always, but most times it's able to go, I'm just going to be, like you said, right off camera here. You're welcome.
And that was just it. We were live if we had one camera facing the other direction, but why would you do that? You don't,
Right.
So we were talking about it as like, the main problem is, 90% of these ghost TV shows is editing.
Yeah.
They film hours and hours of footage to get you 10 minutes of kind of exciting stuff.
Yeah. Like speckled through an entire 60 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. For those of us who've been on ghost hunts and stuff, it's a lot of just standing around going, come on, machine, do something.
Yeah.
Say, are you there? Are you there? Nothing. So we were like, the plus side here is, since this is an internet television station, they have a live feed to the internet. We could just put the cameras on, put them on a feed on YouTube, and just let everybody else edit the footage. Just watch.
That's true.
Watch the comments. Somebody's going to be sitting there at the right time and post a comment. Oh, at 3:15 a.m. we saw something. So
yeah, then you can just roll back to that time. That would be helpful.
Yeah. And my thought, though, immediately when I saw it was a gray guy, looked like wearing a jacket. Did I see my Men in Black? I don't.
It's starting. You brought it. I think it was you.
I would not be surprised at this point because of all this. It didn't come to the house. It went to the studio, which we have been spending a lot of time there. So
I mean, I don't know how you guys feel, but that's how I feel. I'm always like, it's about time I would have something strange happen to me again. It's like it's always just such a neutral zone for me. I always get to talk to everybody else that's having cool stuff happen.
Well, that was me. The last time I'd seen anything that solid was all the way back to the Bellevue Biltmore in the late 80s. So...
About time. Yeah. High five.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Yeah, another high five. Yeah.
That's awesome, Mark. Well, when should we expect Eerie Appalachia to come out?
Well, we're going to be into final press right after Mothman. We're actually going up to Mothman Festival this year to do some more last-minute interviews, get a lot of the photos for the book. Everybody knows our books are full of actual photos of the locations. So before all this lockdown, we were only able to get a few of the places before we had to come home to Florida. So we've got to make another trip in the fall to get all the photos that we need for the book. So that's coming. And so we'll be up in that area. And then once that happens, it'll hit the presses in February. Should be out middle next year. So a little ways to wait. But if I get anything special before then, we'll let you know. And as always, once it gets to press, we can start talking about it with you.
Absolutely. So, we'll have at least 3 editions. We always try to do the triple threat with any of the Eerie books. So I am super excited.
I am so glad we got to talk to you about that. And and I am so excited about the book. Carrie is just starting the illustrations. We will send one of them to you for this that you can post. That's already gone up on the shop at
awesome.
Eerie. For those of you that I'll do my plug now.
Yes, please.
You can follow us at eerieflorida.com. Pretty soon we'll have eerietravels.com up and running, but right now it's just a placeholder. So just go to eerieflorida.com. It's got the links to all our appearances here and where you can get our books. Carrie and I sign them for a small... We sign them all, but if you want a little extra, Carrie will draw a little something in them for a little extra if you don't mind waiting for the book a little bit. And then, but also there, Carrie and Elizabeth have been doing some jewelry with Carrie's art, and they've recently expanded into doing stuff with our beloved Claudius, our Savannah monitor, and then our two boas, Pajamas and Missy. They've started working with their sheds and making some really interesting necklaces and stuff with their sheds and some colored paper behind them, and they look really, really cool. If anybody's looking for something like that or into reptiles, it's just a really neat.
That's very unique. I like that.
So, yeah, you can definitely find those there, too. And then when Eerie Travels premieres, we will definitely share it with Into the Fray fans. And we've been posting some early stuff on the Insiders. We post on the Eerie Florida fans page and the Into the Fray Insiders page before we post anywhere else.
Yes, you guys do. And I appreciate that very much. Well, what about the Eerie Travels TV show? Where can people check out some of that stuff?
Right now, it's been on... we've premiered a few bits on episodes of Nerd Talk TV, which is on WeBeam TV, WeBeam.tv out of Newport Richey, and they've got it's like a community access channel step up, on the internet, and but if you go them, they're a 24-hour channel that broadcasts all kinds of crazy stuff. But Eerie Travels will be on that while we seek a further streaming platform that shall remain nameless at this point. That we are in talks with. So it will be elsewhere when it does come out, but Eerie Travels will be the home for all that. But Eerie Florida right now, you can still find everything.
And Eerie Florida is also on Instagram and on... Are you guys on Twitter?
Yeah, we're on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr. We don't use as much, but we're there. It just kind of mirrors the other two.
Yeah.
And then if you follow us, there's also the old classic Hellview Cemetery. You can find our stuff there, too, from the old haunted house.
Yes. Which still, one day, I know will come back. And I will be flying out there to help work it. That will happen. I promise you that.
Definitely will happen. Definitely. So.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming back on for a preview, a sneak preview with some amazing tales of what will be coming up in Eerie Appalachia.
Yep, our first public appearance in a while will be at Tampa Bay Comic-Con, which may be the first Comic-Con in the country to open back up in July. So we'll be testing the waters. We're the first ones in, so we'll see how it comes out.
What's the date on that in July?
It's July 7th through the 10th, I think, the first weekend in July. So cool. Yeah, we're doing a couple panels there, and then we've got our booth will be there. So.
Well, Mark, thank you again so much, and I'm looking forward to Eerie Appalachia Edition 1 will be official middle of next year.
And if anything comes up before then, I will be in touch. But we will see you on the other side.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. this, I've been to such and such a college, I've done these things in my profession, I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. the same idea in his poem, The Four Quartets, where he says, when you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.